When people close to death experience something that brings them great joy, it can cause them to smile or even laugh while they are dying. However, there are rare cases where people smile even when they are about to die, but for reasons completely unknown. This is what happened to the woman in today's video. This is an extremely strange case that doctors have been unable to explain even after extensive testing. It's creepy and has left doctors completely baffled. The young woman was only 24 years old and had no major health issues at all. She visited the hospital with a high fever, a headache, and vomiting. Doctors determined she was suffering from encephalitis, inflammation of the brain. They administered medication and sent her home. The next day, she was still sick, so her family took her back to the hospital. Her condition was much worse this time around. Her temperature was now 40 degrees Celsius. She was confused and wasn't responding to her loved ones. After examining her, doctors put her into a medically induced coma so that they could perform tests to determine what exactly was wrong with her. Doctors were concerned because after putting her under, she didn't wake up. After a week, her parents grew desperate. They told the medical team to do whatever was necessary to wake their daughter up. But when they went to check on her, they noticed something strange. She had a big smile on her face. At first, they thought it was just a reflex, but she remained smiling for hours. Nobody could figure out why. It was almost as if she was happy and dreaming, but she wasn't awake. What was happening? Medical staff decided to use a camera so that they could monitor the patient throughout the night. The next morning, they checked the footage and saw that she had smiled for most of the night. But she wasn't alone. In one clip, we see a male nurse enter her room. He was clearly talking to her, and she responded by smiling wider. While it might seem totally normal, consider the fact that she was in a coma. She shouldn't have been reacting at all. Her condition continued like this for several days. She would smile, sometimes scream, and then fall back into a deep slumber. Doctors were able to wake her up briefly, and she was responsive during those times. She was able to move her limbs, and she also responded to verbal commands. But once she closed her eyes again, she would go back into a deep slumber and wouldn't react until the next time she smiled. During one of these instances, doctors decided to ask the nurse who was taking care of her if he had said anything to her that may have caused such a reaction. He explained that he often talks to patients who are in a coma. He said it helps them feel more comfortable and less alone. He mentioned that he talked to her about nature, animals, daily life, and more. Apparently, she was listening to him and was reacting by moving her head and extremities. He stopped abruptly when he realized that she was actually smiling. He explained that before this incident, he had never heard of a patient reacting like this. He tried asking her questions, but every time he did, she would either move her body or smile. He continued to talk to her, and at one point, she began laughing. It was the strangest thing he had ever experienced, and believe it or not, he still visits her from time to time. But the question remained, why was she reacting to his voice? Why did she seem so happy? After reviewing hours upon hours of video footage, doctors found that she would smile every time someone entered her room. It didn't matter if it was a doctor, nurse, her parents, or another patient. She would always respond by breaking into a big grin. This was a completely uncharacteristic response. The patient had no history of mental illness, and there was no reason for her to behave this way. Her parents knew this and became even more concerned. They asked the medical staff to keep a close eye on their daughter and record any other movements she made. What they found was even stranger. The patient's arms and legs would move on their own. In some instances, she would try to sit up in bed. Sometimes she would pull off her bandages. Other times, she would try to get out of bed, but she was always Medical staff were perplexed and had no idea how to treat her. They decided to transfer her to a different hospital. It was there that doctors performed a brain scan. The results shocked everyone involved in her case. The scan showed that the entire right side of her brain had been affected by After receiving the results, the medical team decided to administer antiviral medication. It was likely that she had been infected with a virus that caused her brain to shut down. But there was a problem. The scans showed that there was also activity in certain parts of her brain. The part responsible for producing emotions was showing signs of activity, which is why she was reacting to people entering her room and why she was smiling. But the rest of her brain was dead. Doctors couldn't figure out why a small part of her brain was working, and although they continued to try, they weren't able to find an explanation. They had never seen anything like this before. Days turned into weeks, but the patient's condition didn't improve. She continued to smile, move her limbs, and react as if she were fully conscious, but she wasn't. She never regained consciousness and died soon after. Cases like this are extremely rare. There have only been a handful of similar cases reported in medical journals over the past few decades. It seems that in some rare cases, people who are clinically dead can still react to stimuli. There is another case that I should mention here. It is very similar to this case, and it has left many people questioning the boundaries between life and death. A boy was pronounced dead after being struck by lightning. His heart had already stopped beating, and his brain had no activity. His family gathered around his body to say goodbye. That's when his mother noticed that he was breathing heavily. She immediately called for help, and medical staff rushed to his side. They were shocked when they discovered that he was alive. In another case, a girl was also pronounced dead after suffering a heart attack. Just as the medical team was about to remove her from life support, her hand twitched. When they examined her further, they noticed that her brain had activity. It seemed that she had only a few hours left to live, but she ended up making a full recovery. In each of these cases, the patients were technically dead, but they reacted as if they were alive. While the woman in our video wasn't dead, she was in a coma and not reacting as the other patients did. It's unclear whether or not she could hear those who were talking to her. Perhaps she was able to hear them, but she was stuck inside her own mind and unable to communicate with the outside world. It's possible that she was having a pleasant dream, which would explain why she was smiling. But unfortunately, we'll never know. Although this case has been baffling doctors for decades, there's another case that has stumped the medical community for far longer. Some refer to it as a medical miracle, while others believe that it's nothing short of a hoax. In 1978, a girl named Geraldine Cummins suffered a near-death experience. She was at a horse show in Ireland when she suddenly collapsed. She was rushed to the hospital and placed on life support. At first, doctors thought she would make a full recovery, but a few days later, they told her family that she would die. Just as they were about to turn off her life support, she suddenly sat up. Although her heart was beating, she had no brain activity. She was blind and deaf and she couldn't speak, but somehow she was alive. Doctors didn't know how. She spent the next few years in a vegetative state before passing away. Some say this is a miracle, while others believe that there was some sort of error. But I'll let you decide what you think happened. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch the next one. It's full of terrifying things caught on camera.